Natural beach. This is what's silted up since the island was abandoned, and the subsequent damming of the two major rivers has changed the course of the tidal flow. But this was once a 2-metre deep cove, and it was here that they housed the workboats away from the heavy weather, because this is the lee side of the island. But it also meant that these workboats were by default under constant armed military guard, because the build on this promontory sure as heck was. And this promontory has been constructed somewhat differently, from stone from the seabed up, to make it even less susceptible to the rising tides, because this is where they had all the supplies, including the ones you're not getting any of. Sorry, convicts. No rum, tea, tobacco, or sugar or biscuits for you lot. No comforts or indulgences of any kind. And the reason that the commissariat store is under 24/7 armed guard is because that is the best way to control escape attempts from a place like this. Control the food supply. Now some of you might be thinking, well, it's an island, wouldn't the boats be more important for escape? But of course, most of you were transported to the work gangs on the mainland during the day. So that's when you make your break for it. But you need to bear in mind, most of you lot would have been transported out from the inner cities, usually on trumped up charges, just to create a little more breathing space for the middle classes. You wouldn't know how to swim to begin with, and you certainly wouldn't know the first thing about bush tucker. Though we probably all know how Alexander Pierce circumvented that little problem. But as we do have a few youngsters that I don't have to be the one to try to get to sleep tonight, I'm just going to leave it there. Four small cottages that house the commandant, the doctor, the military officer and the chaplain. Now we've met the first commandant and we heard what happened to him, so we'll jump down the other end of the terrace now and meet the Reverend William Schofield and his wife Martha. They had the first chaplaincy here on Sarah Island. They were devout Wesleyan Methodists, good Christian folk, but by today's standards you'd probably just call them fundamentalist evangelicals, because it was all about the conversion for the Schofields, and they kept a running account in their diaries just how their conversions were going. So we know from their own records that it was Thomas Day, originally a slave from Jamaica, who was the first to go, yeah, I'll become a Wesleyan Methodist. Why not? It afforded him an excellent job. He got to be the Schofield servant. And he got his own accommodation. We can see the remains of where that tree fern now grows. Now, getting your own cottage as a convict in a place like this was a pretty big deal. And Thomas Day was certainly nobody's fool. See, with the subsequent chaplaincies, he later became a Presbyterian and then an Anglican. Kept his job, and he was later sent from here to Port Arthur, where he finally became a Catholic. How's that for tweaking your CV? But the servants here are mischief makers. We've got the remains of two servants' cottages behind this tree fern here, and here we have the kitchen area for the brass. So this is the hot water service, little firebox with a sat in the bottom, big copper pot on top, water constantly on the boil, and up behind that we have the oven. Now we know something of one of the cooks here on Sarah Island, Sarah Simmons, who when Governor Arthur discovered she was here, said, best get that odious creature off. But she only came out towards the end of the settlement. It was something of a bad influence, it seems, but at the establishment of the settlement, there were 8 women sent out and kept on Grummet Rock. But before they were keeping the fellas out there, so they're not running a brothel. A few of the military seem to think so. No, these were nurses, but by God, you're a feisty bunch. And you in particular, Mary Ann Furs. Yes. You are constantly in the stocks for answering back to Dr. Garrett, aren't you? Yes, but I can't blame you, love. Because you see, Dr. Garrett is more than a little mad. He's a dipsomaniac, never sober. Perhaps explained by the fact that when he arrived on Sarah Island, he was on his honeymoon with his 18-year-old bride, Charlotte. Doesn't sound too bad, does it, fellas? Except she's brought along her 7-year-old kid sister Mary for the holiday. And as you'll notice, it is just a tiny 2-room cottage. Much easier turned to the bottles and the wife for comfort. Now the servants have tried all the usual tricks to get rid of the doctor, and they've all failed. so they come up with a better idea to bribe William Sylvester, the gardener on the island. Now, basically the pathways on the original settlement extend about as far as these ones do, and then the whole back end of the island behind the kitchen area was under cultivation for cropping vegetables for the settlement. And William Sylvester was the gardener here on the island, and he could grow practically anything except the one thing he can't grow is tobacco. Isn't that right, Bill? And we've got a full quid of tobacco. Don't ask us how. It's all yours if you'll help us get rid of the doctor. You'll do that, won't you, mate? Just need you to come for a quick stroll past up to Garrett's house. Don't you come, mate? That's it. Absolutely perfect, except for one minor detail. Stark naked, remember? There are a few youngsters and it is mixed company, so you better not, Bill. But upon accepting the bribe, William Sylvester did in fact strip to his birthday suit and saunter past the back veranda of Dr. Garrett's house while his young bride and her kid sister were sitting there having afternoon tea. They were scandalised at the sight of a naked man. Sign the Times, Bill, don't take that one personally. And Dr. Garrett packed up the family and was gone within the week. Poor Bill is the motor underdog of the sawpits for that little caper, but everyone remember the name, William Sylvester, first recorded streaker in Australian history. Put your pants on, Bill, we're going this way. Now I'll get you to take your photos and have a look at the